On September 1st, 1939, German forces crossed the Polish border before dawn, and the deadliest war in human history had officially begun. Poland's army numbered nearly 1 million men, brave, determined, and ready to defend their homeland. Yet in just 5 weeks, one of Europe's largest armies collapsed completely. 5 fatal mistakes turned Poland's defense into a swift and total catastrophe. Fatal mistake 1. Poland's military strategy tried to defend every mile of an impossibly long border at once. Poland's frontier with Germany and German-controlled territory stretched over 1,700 miles in total length. Polish commanders spread their forces thin along this entire border, hoping to hold every inch of ground. This decision left no strong reserve force ready to counter a concentrated German breakthrough. French and British allies had urged Poland to instead defend along a shorter, more defensible line further east. Polish leadership refused, unwilling to abandon major cities and industrial regions to the invading Germans. This political decision came at a devastating and immediate military cost within days. German forces identified weak points along the thin Polish line and attacked with concentrated, overwhelming force. Polish divisions found themselves outnumbered and outflanked almost everywhere the Germans chose to strike. Fatal mistake 2. Poland's military still relied heavily on horse cavalry against Germany's modern mechanized war machine. Poland maintained 11 cavalry brigades in 1939, some of the finest mounted soldiers in Europe. Polish cavalry were brave, skilled, and used innovative tactics, but horses could not stop tanks. Germany invaded with over 2,700 tanks, supported by fast-moving mechanized infantry and devastating air power. The myth that Polish cavalry charged German tanks directly with lances is a popular exaggeration of history. In truth, cavalry did clash with German infantry and were sometimes caught by surprise tank attacks. At Krojanty, Polish cavalry successfully routed German infantry before unexpected armored vehicles arrived and inflicted losses. This single incident became distorted into propaganda, showing supposedly backward Polish tactics facing modern warfare. The deeper truth remains sobering, regardless of the myth surrounding this particular battle. Poland's military technology and mechanization simply could not match Germany's rapidly modernized fighting force. Fatal mistake 3. Poland's air force, though skilled, was hopelessly outnumbered and quickly overwhelmed within days. The Polish Air Force possessed only about 400 combat aircraft when the German invasion began. Germany's Luftwaffe deployed over 2,000 aircraft against Poland in the opening days of war. Polish pilots fought fiercely and shot down dozens of German aircraft, despite their inferior equipment and numbers. Yet within the first week, Poland had lost most of its operational combat aircraft entirely. Without air cover, Polish ground forces became exposed to devastating Luftwaffe dive bomber attacks constantly. German Stuka dive bombers targeted Polish troop columns, railways, communication lines, and civilian centers relentlessly. This anti-air dominance let Germany move troops and supplies freely across the entire battlefield. Poland's brave pilots, without reinforcement or replacement aircraft, could not sustain this uneven struggle for long. By September's second week, the skies over Poland belonged entirely to the German Luftwaffe. Fatal mistake 4. Poland's military command structure struggled badly to communicate and coordinate under Germany's rapid attack. German forces used a devastating new approach combining tanks, aircraft, and infantry in fast, coordinated strikes. This approach later became known as Blitzkrieg, meaning lightning war in the German language. Polish commanders, trained in older methods, struggled to respond to this speed and coordination. Communication lines were frequently cut by German bombing raids targeting railways, bridges, and telephone networks. Polish units sometimes fought without knowing what nearby forces were doing or where the enemy actually was. Orders arrived late, if they arrived at all, leaving local commanders making desperate decisions alone. The Polish High Command relocated multiple times as German forces advanced faster than anyone in Warsaw expected. This constant movement further disrupted communication and coordination across an already struggling defensive effort. Polish soldiers fought with tremendous courage, but courage alone could not overcome this communication breakdown. Fatal mistake 5. Poland counted on French and British military support that never actually arrived in time. Britain and France had both signed treaties promising to defend Poland if Germany invaded. On September 3, 1939, Both nations declared war on Germany following the invasion of Poland. Yet neither nation launched a serious military offensive to relieve pressure on Polish forces. French forces made only a limited, cautious advance into German territory before quickly withdrawing again. This period later became known as the Phony War, months of inaction on the Western Front. Poland's leaders had planned their entire defense, assuming Western allies would divide German attention and resources. Without that promised support, Germany could commit its full military strength entirely against Poland alone. Polish soldiers continued fighting bravely, believing help was still coming from the West eventually. That help never arrived in any meaningful military form throughout the entire September campaign. By September 17th, disaster struck from an entirely different and unexpected direction altogether. The Soviet Union invaded Poland from the east, honoring a secret pact made with Nazi Germany. The Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact had secretly divided Poland between Germany and the Soviet Union weeks earlier. Polish forces, already collapsing under German pressure, now faced a second invasion from the east. This coordinated two-front assault made any continued organized Polish defense essentially impossible to sustain. Warsaw itself came under heavy German siege, with civilians and soldiers defending the capital fiercely. The city endured relentless bombing and artillery bombardment for weeks before finally surrendering on September 27th. Scattered Polish units continued fighting in isolated pockets even after the capital's surrender occurred. The last significant organized Polish resistance ended in early October, roughly 5 weeks after the invasion began. Now let us examine the deeper lessons hidden inside each of Poland's 5 fatal mistakes. The first lesson: spreading defensive forces too thin along an impossibly long border invites catastrophic breakthrough somewhere. Concentrated strength at key points matters more than trying to defend every single mile equally. The second lesson: outdated military technology cannot match a modern, mechanized enemy no matter how brave the soldiers. Horses, however skilled their riders, simply could not compete against tanks and mechanized infantry divisions. The third lesson: air superiority determines the outcome of modern battles faster than ground forces ever could alone. An army without air cover becomes exposed and vulnerable to constant, devastating enemy bombardment from above. The fourth lesson: communication and coordination are just as important as weapons and manpower in modern warfare. An army that cannot talk to itself cannot respond to a fast-moving, coordinated enemy attack. The fifth lesson: never build an entire defensive strategy around promises that other nations may not actually keep. Poland trusted its allies completely, and that trust was tragically not honored in time to matter. These 5 mistakes did not happen separately from one another during this brutal 5-week campaign. They combined together into a devastating chain of compounding military and political failure. A border stretched too thin meant German forces broke through at multiple points simultaneously and quickly. Outdated cavalry and limited mechanization meant Poland could not counterattack these breakthroughs effectively once they occurred. Lost air superiority meant German forces moved and struck freely without meaningful resistance from above. Poor communication meant Polish commanders could not coordinate a unified response to Germany's rapid advance. And absent Allied support meant Germany faced no meaningful pressure, forcing it to divide its attention elsewhere. Each failure made the next one worse, accelerating Poland's collapse far faster than anyone had expected. Historians still study the September campaign as the first true demonstration of Blitzkrieg warfare in action. Germany's coordinated use of tanks, aircraft, and infantry shocked military observers watching from around the entire world. Poland's defeat taught other nations painful lessons about the terrifying speed of modern mechanized warfare. Polish soldiers, pilots, and cavalrymen fought this entire campaign with extraordinary courage against impossible, overwhelming odds. At the Battle of the Bzura, Polish forces launched one of the war's largest counterattacks against advancing German forces. Though ultimately unsuccessful, this counterattack delayed German forces and inflicted meaningful, significant casualties upon them. Warsaw's civilian population endured weeks of merciless bombing, yet the city refused to surrender easily or quickly. Polish resistance continued underground for years after the formal military campaign had officially ended completely. The verdict of history remains clear regarding Poland's brave but ultimately doomed defense in September 1939. Poland did not fail because its soldiers lacked courage or genuine willingness to fight and sacrifice. Poland failed because 5 compounding military and strategic mistakes overwhelmed even the bravest defensive effort imaginable. The September campaign proved that modern warfare demanded new thinking, new technology, and new coordinated military tactics entirely. Poland's tragedy became a warning to the entire world about the terrifying nature of Blitzkrieg. 5 weeks was all it took to conquer a nation of over 30 million people. Poland's soldiers, starved of Allied support and modern equipment, deserve history's genuine and lasting respect regardless.